Hello, this is Mrs. Schuver. Tomorrow we will take CFA number 3, which is a common formative assessment that deals with expressions and equations. So we want to go over some parallel tasks that are similar to your CFA to help you prepare for it. So the very first question, number 1, asks us to simplify the expression. I see parentheses, so the very first thing I want to do is use the distributive property to release the parentheses. So this number out in front will multiply both the first and the second term inside the parentheses. So this is a negative 1/4 times 8x, and this is going to become our first term, and then negative 1/4 times negative 12. And this will become our second term. So you can pause this and use your calculator to multiply 1/4 times each of those numbers. When we multiply negative 1 ABC 8x, that becomes negative 2x. And when we multiply negative 1 ABC 4 times negative 12, that becomes positive 3. And if we recall, when we have a negative divided by a negative, multiplying a negative, we get a positive. That's why that's a positive 3. The only thing we haven't used in this expression yet is that minus 2, so that will drop down. Now we're going to collect like terms. And we see that there's only one term that has an x, so I'm going to bring this down. Yet I have two constants or terms that are without the x. So if I look at positive 3 and negative 2, that becomes positive 1. And we're finished simplifying this problem. Our next question says that Joquan says the two expressions 1/5 times the quantity 2x plus 40 and negative 4 times the quantity x plus 2 are equivalent. Is she correct? So we want to know if Joquan is correct. It also says show your work at the right. Well, first of all, we want to remind ourselves that equivalent means that these two things are equal. They're just given in different forms. And right now they don't look like they're the same. However, if we simplify each one of these, they may be equivalent expressions. So let's start by simplifying this first expression. I'm going to do this by taking 1/5 times 20x. So 1/5 times 20x. And then I'm going to take 1/5 times positive 40. So 1/5 times positive 40. When I use my calculator, 1/5 times 20x would be 4x, and 1/5 times 40 would equal positive 8. So this is the simplest form of this expression, 4x plus 8. Now let's complete the other. So I'm going to take negative 1/4 times x. So negative 1/4 times x, and that's going to become my first term, and negative 4 times positive 2. So negative 4 times positive 2. When I simplify that expression, I get negative 4 minus 8. Now we need to explain, because it asked if she was correct, we need to explain why or why not we feel that the expressions are equivalent. As I look at the coefficients of both of these expressions, there's a positive 4 for the first one, but a negative 4 for the second. And if I look at the constant of each expression, this is a positive 8, and this is a negative 8, or minus 8. So obviously the two expressions are not the same. In fact, they may look similar, but because of the signs, they are not the same. So no, Jo Kwon is not correct. The coefficients, meaning the numbers in front of the variables, and the constants, meaning the numbers without the variables, are opposite. So take a moment to write that, and then we'll move on to the next question. Question number 3 is pretty straightforward. It just asks us to solve and find the value of x. So I know that this is written what some people look at as backward, but I'm going to go ahead and solve it this way and then discuss another way we could solve it. I'm going to build my wall, and since my x is on this side, I need to start on the right side. I still want to get rid of the constant, the number without the variable first. So I'm going to add 8 to both sides. When I do that, what is left on this side is a positive, is a negative 12. And on this side is cancel out, and I have a negative 4x. So this next step is very important because when I divide or multiply, if this coefficient is negative, I have to keep it negative, what I'm dividing by negative. So I'm going to divide by a negative 4 on both sides. This cancels out here, leaving me with what we requested to find, x. And on the other side, a negative divided by a negative is a positive, so this would be positive 3. And I see the answer right here is answer D. Now I mentioned at the beginning there's another way you could have done this. You could have moved, if you don't like seeing it backwards, you could have moved negative 4x minus 8 first, keeping the numbers, the coefficient and the constant in the same order they're given, and you could have moved the negative 20 to the other side, to the right side. And as long as this negative 4 stays with x and then the minus or negative stays with the 8, we're in good shape. And then you could continue to solve as usual. Let's go on now to question number 4. If I look at question number 4, it says Carly bought 3 sweaters that each cost the same amount. And she bought 1 skirt that costs $18. So there's 3 sweaters, but we don't know the cost. And there's 1 skirt that we do know the cost, which is $18. The item she bought costs a total of $93. And the question is, what is the cost of each sweater? And they gave us a variable that they want us to use for the cost of the sweaters. Now, they didn't request that we write a 2-step equation, but I'm going to go ahead and write one because I think it might help us. There are, of course, other ways to figure out the cost of the sweater, but I'm noticing that it says 3 sweaters, and here it's talking about sweater, and they give me the cost of the sweater, they give me a W. So I know that she's buying 3 sweaters, but we don't know the cost. So that would be 3 times whatever the cost is. She purchased 1 skirt that they did tell me the price of, so then she'd be adding the cost of the skirt, and they mentioned that the total was $93. So I have enough information now to solve this equation and decide how much it costs for each each sweater. So I'm going to subtract 18 on both sides, and these 2 go away, leaving me with 3W. And over here, I need to borrow from 9 and make that 13. 13 minus 8 is 5, and 8 minus 1 is 75. So I'm left with 3W equals 75. So I'm going to divide by 3 and divide by 3, leaving me with W equals 25. And since W is talking about the cost of the sweaters, then this must be money. And sure enough, letter C is the answer. Another strategy you could have used would be to multiply each one of these answers. For example, they gave us 4 different choices. I could have taken 3 times each one of them. Right now I'm using choice A, and then added 18 for the skirt and ask myself, is the answer 93? Is that true? So that would be another strategy if you weren't quite sure how to write the equation. Let's move on to the last question now. This says, one day Michael bought 5 pairs of socks for $3.50 each. And he bought 2 pairs of shoes for $D each. He spent a total of $87.46. This one does instruct us to write and solve an equation to find the cost of the pair of shoes. And they've already defined our variable for us. They've already told us that 2 pairs of shoes at $D each. So we don't know what that is. So our equation would look like this. Let's start first of all by acknowledging that we do know the cost of the socks. There's 5 pairs of socks and they cost $3.50 each. So off to the side, I do know that if I take $3.50 times 5, that's going to give me the total cost of the socks. And so that won't be a mystery. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 5 is 25. Carry the 2. And 5 times 3 plus 2 more is 17. When we work with decimals, if you're not using the calculator right now, I have 2 decimal places. So I need to show that in my answer. So the cost of the socks, the total cost of the socks is $17.50. The reason why that's important is when we write a 2-step equation, we want to know the constant. So we were also told that Michael bought 5 pairs of socks, and now we know that that's $17.50, plus 2 pairs of shoes that cost $D. So we don't know the cost of the 2 pairs of shoes, but it's 2 times the cost because there's 2 pairs of shoes, and they did give us the total. So this is the equation that we'd use to solve. This is what we have. If you're uncomfortable seeing the constant first, you can always switch these around as long as this stays positive. This positive sign goes with a 2, and you can see we have a positive 1750. So down below, I'm just going to rewrite it to make it more comfortable. And then we're going to solve it. The first solving step, no matter whether it was written in this form or this form, is to get rid of the constant. So I would go ahead and subtract the constant on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of the problem down here. I would take away $17.50 on both sides. I'm going to strongly encourage you using a calculator, but just to make sure we remember how to subtract without the calculator. When we're working with decimals, they have to be lined up, and 6 minus 0 would be 6. 5 I can't take away from 4, so I'm going to have to borrow. So 14 minus 5 would be 9, and I drop down the decimal. 6 minus 7 I can't do, I have to borrow again. So 16 minus 7 would be 9, and finally 7 minus 1 would be 6. Now I want to go ahead and use division. Divide by 2 on both sides. And the answer would be D equal $34.98. And you're going to notice there's a place for the answer here. So I'm going to move this up here, $34.98. and that's the cost of each pair of shoes. Good luck on your CFA tomorrow, and I hope this was helpful.